What do you see from OKC next year? I know you've been trying to buy in on the OKC top 4 seed takes, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, yeah, we'll see how true that is when we get to our Western Conference predictions and everything. But I mean, how can you not be feeling good about this team going into next season? Especially with the leaps that they made last year. I mean, they were a game within making it to the postseason or to the playoffs. I mean, they did play some postseason basketball with the play-in, but a team that's just on the up and up, man. I mean, they're well coached. Young talent has been playing well. Giddey got better, which I remember last summer when we were talking about Josh Giddey, we were very just like iffy on him. Like, how much better can he actually be? And he really stepped his game up to, I think, levels that maybe we didn't even see coming, for him, especially so young into his career. Shea was all NBA first team this year. Jalen Williams, I think, really stepped up and, showed that he was one of the better rookies from this class. And then their top pick from last year's draft, Chet, we're going to see what he can produce in his, quote unquote rookie season. Exciting times in OKC, man. I wasn't a big fan of what they did in the draft. We kind of discussed that either last week or the week before. Drafting Case and Walls, I didn't love that. But outside of that, I'm really a fan of what they've been doing. It's just about, one, Chet being healthy and making sure their young guys stay healthy too. But I think I can like almost comfortably say that this team should be a top 6 team next season. 4 seed, I don't know yet, but top 6, I'm bought in on that for sure.
I think that's a pretty fair buy-in. Just looking at the talent that this roster has top to bottom. I mean, you just look at the starting lineup of Josh Giddey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like we'll go like J-Dub. Honestly, whoever else they want to start out there, I assume probably Lou Dort at the other forward spot. And then if they play Chet at the 5, like that's a very talented starting 5, not to mention the amount of bench pieces they'd have supplementing that. So just even looking on paper, I feel like they're a team that should be kind of competing for that level of spot. But then also, I think something that just makes sense with this team to me is like when we're giving these standings predictions, like there might be some teams that finish below them that might be better in a playoff atmosphere. But I think as far as the regular season goes, a team like this where like everybody's so young, wants that first taste of playoff experience, is on the up. I think honestly it kind of goes back to that comment that we had in chat, kind of that was more about the Hornets, but I kind of want to apply it here almost, where it's like I feel like they could be one of those teams that really hits like a regular season stride and ends up winning a lot of games. It might finish in the standings ahead of some teams that should be better than them. Just because they're like kind of the new kids on the block, they really want to prove themselves, take the league by storm, for lack of a better term. So it could be a very big season for them. I would hate to see them disappoint. I think now the expectation is to make a push into the postseason and not just to play in, but make the playoffs. But I think they're perfectly equipped to do that. If Shea plays like he did last year, I think people would definitely further him in those superstar level conversations. If J-Dub doesn't take a sophomore slump and he continues to progress, and I've been the guy who day in, day out keeps pushing these Chet agendas, specifically on his defensive impact on this team. They already have some good defenders. Josh Giddey is a good defender for a guard. Shea hasn't shown it all the time, but he has good intangibles to be good there. Lou Dort is one of the best perimeter guys in the league. Really just having Chet Holmgren in there as that paint presence, specifically on the help side, I think it's just going to be invaluable to this team and what they're trying to accomplish. I think his impact will be seen from day one. And I would not be surprised if he was one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year. I think he's that good. And in a league where you have rookies coming in like a Chet Holmgren, or not like I'm talking about Chet, but like a Wemby, like a Brandon Miller, like a Scoot Henderson especially, he's right up there with those guys. And I do think that he'll be a special talent for them.
Yeah, I think Chet is going to completely change OKC this season because everything that OKC were bad at last year is what Chet is good at. For the most part, this was a team that was really lacking size, that was really lacking interior defense. Chet's giving you that length, and he's certainly giving you that rim protection. They were a really poor defensive rebounding team, and Chet's going to come in and improve that immediately. And they were really, really lacking a play finisher or any amount of lob threat. They just didn't have that. I mean, they were running Jay Will and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl at the center position for the majority of last season. And one could argue those guys shouldn't even be playing center. And two, they're fine role players, but they're not exactly ideal as your starting center. So you put Chet into that situation. Evidently, like you talked about, Gabe, that defensive impact is going to be significant from day one, even with growing pains, even with rookie struggles, even with adjusting to the fact that he was just injured for a year. He's going to be a better rim protector than they had at any point last season. And on the offensive end, you consider the playmaking of Shea, the playmaking of Giddey, and of course, Chet has a bit of a three-point shot. He's going to have a better handle than most bigs do. But even just the fact that his length and his ability to be some amount of a finisher around the rim is going to be so much better than what they had at all last season with as good a playmaking as they have. It's just going to open up their offense so much more. And like you mentioned, Gabe, with them being a team that could just get hot during the regular season, that might have that desire to win a lot of regular season games that older teams like the Clippers or the Suns or teams like that might not have as much of a desire to win. The other thing with OKC is despite the fact they're young, they don't play like a young team. And what I mean by that is usually a lot of young teams, like they're not great defensively. They have turnover problems. They have a lot of mental lapses on the defensive end. This is a team that without Chet last year was still 13th in defensive rating. That's pretty much a top 10 lock with Chet now on the team, now that you have a really good rim protector. They're a defense that forces amongst the top 3 in turnovers forced in the league. Very active defense, very long defense. Throw Chet in the mix, that's only going to get better. And offensively, they hardly turn the ball over. They're bottom 5 in the league in turnovers on the offensive end. So this is a team that doesn't make those types of mistakes that these young teams usually do make. Part of that's just the fact that they play with 2 very good ball handlers in Shea and Giddey for the offensive end of the floor. But point being, this team is mature beyond their years in a lot of aspects, and then now have got a year under their belt where they played significant and meaningful basketball for the entirety of the season compared to the few years before that. So I think there's a lot to indicate that this team is going to have a much better year than they did last year. Chet being a big part of it, but the fact that they're just going to continue to develop and have already got a lot of good habits is really going to help.
Definitely. I mean, I love the point where you said Chet's going to have it like very easy offensively because he's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be looked at to be like the second guy right away because Josh Giddey's so good with the ball in his hands. J-Dub, I think he's only going to improve, being a primary playmaker. If Summer League was any telling, they want to put the ball in his hand more, and I think that's something that he will be able to do. And he's going to have just so many easy opportunities, just rolling to the basket, just being in the right spot at the right time, and just having good hands. Chet's going to have a very good rookie year, but like Gabe mentioned, and like you alluded to, Devin, his defense is really what's going to separate him and is what's going to make this team what we maybe all, I don't know how Gabe's really feeling about them, but we all think that they have the potential to be a certified playoff team next season. So, I'm excited to see Chet, but just, continue growth from Giddey, J-Dub. We know what Shea's going to bring. And who's going to be those guys off the bench that you can look to every night? Because they got a lot of guys on that bench that are still young. Like Ousmane Dieng didn't get a lot of burn last season. Trey Mann's fighting for his spot. They got a lot of guys that, want to still prove themselves. So who's going to be those guys in that second unit that can really separate themselves and be contributors night in and night out?
Yeah, no, I think they're in. I guess just to clarify that, just because looking at the Western Conference, like I think it's a pretty easy bet that Denver's above them, that the Suns are above them, and teams like even like the Lakers and Clippers, like I'm pretty damn sure are going to be in there. But at the same time, those are kind of older teams that are more built for the postseason. Especially looking at the Lakers, like I know what they were really good towards the tail end of last season, but I think they almost had to. I think if they were to just say like, hey, like we're good, we have an older roster, we're gonna take it to the playoffs, like I think that's perfectly acceptable. And so if they were to finish a little bit lower than the Thunder, I'm not surprised. We know the Clippers have players in and out of the lineup all the time. I'm not surprised if the Thunder are over them. And you could see the Kings dropping a few more games. I still think the Kings are in as a top 6 still, but like we know usually after you have that breakout season, the next year things are a little bit harder for you. So while they're still a very quality team, if OKC's taking the league by storm, I can see that being another team they finish above. Things just get complicated when you start talking about teams like the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Mavericks. There's a lot of teams that are very good. But, those teams have a lot of question marks too. Dallas is trying to find their first playoff appearance with Kyrie on the team because they fell out last year. Memphis misses Ja for 25 games. That's a lot of ground that OKC could take on them. And so really all these rosters, I mean, OKC, they're ready to head into this season full force 100% from day one. There's not really a lot of figuring out to do. as long as they manage to slide Chet in effectively. And I think they'll definitely be able to do that because while he's new in terms of playing NBA games, he's been in the franchise for over a year. So their biggest new impact piece should be a smoother transition than what the other rosters have to figure out.
Yeah, I think they should have a pretty easy transition with Chet. Like you say, he's been around, he's been with the guys now, and sliding in to play next to Shea and next to Giddey is about as easy as it's going to get. So very, very optimal situation for a former number 2 overall pick to be rolling into